Mental toughness is not something you're born with, it's built through voluntary suffering. And here's the disturbing reality: Navy SEAL psychologists have proven that the human mind quits at approximately 40% of its actual capacity. When you think you're done, you're not even halfway. Your brain is lying to you to keep you safe, and that lie is keeping you weak. By the end of this video, I'll show you the exact discomfort protocol that expands your mental capacity by reprogramming your quit threshold. But first, you need to see what mental softness is costing you every single day. Let me show you what's happening right now. Something gets hard. Your brain sends a signal: this is too much. Stop. And you obey. You quit the workout. You avoid the conversation. You take the easy path. And you think that's just your limit, that you've reached your max. But you haven't. You've reached your brain's safety threshold. And your brain's job is not to make you great. It's to keep you alive. And alive doesn't require excellence. It just requires survival. So every time you listen to that quit signal, you're training yourself to be mentally soft. And softness guarantees you'll break when life gets hard. Here's what nobody tells you about mental toughness. It's not about being emotionless or fearless. It's about your capacity to endure discomfort without quitting. Tough people feel the same pain you do, the same doubt, the same exhaustion, but they've expanded their tolerance. They can sit in the fire longer. And that extra time in the fire is where transformation happens. Because growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in the space between "I want to quit" and "I kept going anyway." And most people never access that space. They tap out at the first sign of discomfort. Now here's the brutal part. Every time you quit early, you're lowering your threshold. You're teaching your brain that when things get hard, we stop. And the more you practice quitting, the easier it becomes. Until you're someone who can't handle any adversity. Someone who collapses at minor inconvenience. Someone who needs perfect conditions to function. And perfect conditions don't exist. So you're constantly overwhelmed, constantly anxious, constantly breaking. Not because life is harder for you, but because you're softer than you need to be. Let me tell you what mental softness costs you. First, opportunities vanish. Because opportunities require risk and risk requires resilience. Second, relationships fail. Because relationships require difficult conversations and you avoid anything uncomfortable. Third, goals die. Because goals require sustained effort and you quit when it stops feeling good. Fourth, self-respect disappears. Because deep down, you know you're not showing up as the person you could be, and that knowledge eats you alive. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. When you experience discomfort, your anterior cingulate cortex activates. That's the conflict detection center. It notices the gap between what you want and what you're experiencing, and it triggers a stress response. Your amygdala fires. Cortisol floods your system, and your brain screams stop. This is the quit signal, and most people interpret it as truth. If my brain is telling me to stop, I must need to stop. But that's not truth. That's your survival system trying to conserve energy, and conservation is the enemy of expansion. Now here's the shift that changes everything. Mental toughness is trainable. You don't build it by thinking tough thoughts. You build it by doing hard things when you don't feel like it. Every time you push past the quit signal, you're expanding your threshold. You're teaching your brain we can handle more than we thought. And your brain adapts. It recalibrates. The thing that used to break you becomes your new baseline. And this process is infinite. There's no ceiling to how tough you can become, only the ceiling you accept. Here's the framework. Mental toughness has 3 layers: physical resilience, emotional regulation, cognitive endurance. Physical resilience is your body's ability to perform under stress. Emotional regulation is your ability to stay calm when everything is chaos. Cognitive endurance is your ability to focus and problem solve when you're exhausted. Most people ignore all 3 and wonder why they break easily, but elite performers train all 3 systematically, and that's why they're unbreakable. Let me show you what physical resilience training looks like. It's deliberately putting your body under stress to expand its capacity. Cold exposure, hard workouts, fasting, sleep deprivation training. You're not doing these because they're fun. You're doing them because they teach your nervous system that discomfort is not danger, that you can be uncomfortable and survive. And once your body learns this, it stops sending panic signals every time something is hard. You've desensitized the alarm system. But here's the trap. Most people do hard things once and expect to be transformed. They take one cold shower and wonder why they're still soft. But toughness is not built in moments. It's built in repetition. One cold shower is exposure. 30 consecutive cold showers is adaptation. You're not looking for the intensity of one session. You're looking for the consistency of many. And consistency is what rewires the system. Here's the psychology. Your brain has a discomfort tolerance range. Below a certain threshold, you're comfortable. Above it, you quit. And that range is determined by your history. If you've spent years avoiding discomfort, your range is narrow. Everything feels overwhelming. But if you've spent years deliberately seeking discomfort, your range is wide. You can handle intense stress without breaking. And the only way to widen the range is to repeatedly push into the upper edge. To stay in discomfort just a little longer than you want to. That's the training. Now here's where it gets interesting. The second layer is emotional regulation. This is your ability to not spiral when things go wrong. Most people experience a setback and emotionally collapse. They catastrophize. They panic. They lose all clarity. But mentally tough people experience the same setback and stay level, not because they don't feel the emotion, but because they don't let the emotion control their response. They feel the fear and act anyway. They feel the frustration and stay focused. They've trained the gap between stimulus and response. Here's how you train emotional regulation. You put yourself in situations that trigger emotional intensity and practice staying calm. Public speaking, high-stakes competitions, difficult conversations. You're not avoiding the emotion. You're sitting with it while maintaining function. And every time you do this, you're strengthening your prefrontal cortex's ability to override your amygdala. You're building the neural pathway that says, I can feel intense emotion and still think clearly. And that pathway is power. Let me give you the protocol. Step 1. Identify your quit point. Where do you typically give up? Physical exhaustion? Emotional overwhelm? Mental fatigue? Step 2. Deliberately push 10% past that point. Not 100%, just 10%. You normally quit at 8 reps, do 9. You normally end the work session when you feel tired. Work 10 more minutes. You're stretching the threshold incrementally. Step 3. Track it. Write down when you pushed past the quit signal. You're building evidence that you're capable of more than you thought. Here's what happens when you do this consistently. Week 1, pushing past the quit signal is brutal. You hate it. Week 2, it's still hard but less shocking. Your brain is adjusting. Week 3, your old quit point feels easier. Week 4, you've established a new baseline. What used to break you is now your warm-up. And this isn't theoretical. This is neuroplasticity. You're literally rewiring your brain's tolerance for discomfort. And the rewiring is permanent if you maintain it. But here's the part most people skip. You need cognitive endurance. This is your ability to think clearly when you're physically or emotionally drained. Most people's IQ drops when they're tired. They make terrible decisions. They can't focus. They react instead of respond. But mentally tough people maintain clarity even in chaos. Because they've trained it. They've practiced problem solving under fatigue. And practice creates capacity. Here's the training. You do cognitive tasks when you're exhausted. After a hard workout, you do math problems. After a stressful day, you write. After poor sleep, you strategize. You're forcing your brain to function when it wants to shut down. And this is uncomfortable. Your brain will resist. It will tell you to rest first, think later. But you override it. You think anyway. And over time, your cognitive endurance expands. You can think clearly in situations that would paralyze most people. Now here's the secret method I promised you. It's called the misogi. It's a Japanese concept adopted by endurance athletes. Once a year, you do something so hard that success is uncertain. Not impossible, but genuinely uncertain. A 24-hour challenge. A 100-mile run. A solo survival expedition. Something that tests every dimension of your toughness. And the point is not to prove you're tough. It's to discover how tough you actually are. Because you don't know your limits until you test them. And most people never test them. Here's what happens when you complete a misogi. Your entire perception of difficulty recalibrates. The things that used to feel impossible now feel manageable. Because you've proven to yourself that you can endure far more than you thought. You've reset your quit threshold. and that reset affects everything. Work stress that used to overwhelm you feels minor. Relationship conflicts that used to break you feel navigable. You're not avoiding hard things anymore. You're seeking them, because you've learned that hard things make you harder. But here's the trap. Some people do the misogi and then coast. They prove they're tough once and never test it again. But toughness is not a permanent state. It's a maintained capacity. If you stop training it, it atrophies, just like muscle. So the misogi is not a one-time event. It's an annual recalibration. You do it every year. And every year, you raise the bar. Because the goal is not to be tough enough for last year's challenges. It's to be ready for next year's. Here's the identity shift you need. You're not someone who avoids discomfort. You're someone who seeks it. Because you understand that discomfort is the signal of growth. When something is easy, you're not expanding. You're maintaining. And maintenance is just slow decline. So you chase the edge. The place where you're not sure you can do it. And you stay there as long as you can. Because that's where you become more. Let me show you what happens when you don't build mental toughness. Life breaks you, not catastrophically in one moment, but slowly. Death by 1,000 small quits. You avoid the hard conversation. You skip the workout. You choose comfort over growth. And each choice feels insignificant, but they compound. And one day you wake up and realize you've become someone who can't handle pressure, who needs everything to be easy, who collapses when challenged. And that realization is devastating, because you know you could have been more, but you chose soft. Here's the truth. Mental toughness is not optional if you want to do anything significant. Significant things are hard. They require endurance, resilience, the ability to get hit and keep moving. And if you haven't built that capacity, you'll quit the first time things get real. Not because you don't want it, but because you can't handle it. And want without capacity is just fantasy. Now let me tell you what you're losing every day you stay mentally soft. You're losing respect from yourself and others. You're losing opportunities that require someone who doesn't break. You're losing time by quitting things you could have finished. You're losing identity by becoming someone who avoids instead of engages. And you're losing the person you could have been. The version of you that's strong enough to build the life you want. That version exists, but only if you're willing to suffer to become them. Here's the protocol for today. You're going to do one thing that makes you uncomfortable. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. A cold shower, a hard workout, a difficult phone call, something where your brain will tell you to quit, and you're going to push through. Not because it's pleasant, but because you're training. You're expanding the threshold, and every time you push through, you're becoming someone different, someone tougher. Because mental toughness is not about never feeling weak. It's about acting strong when you feel weak. It's not about never wanting to quit. It's about not quitting when you want to. It's not about being superhuman. It's about being the best version of human you can be. And that version is forged in discomfort. In the moments you wanted to stop but didn't. In the days you felt like giving up but kept going. In the challenges that broke everyone else but not you. Build your toughness, not for the sake of being tough, but for the sake of becoming capable of the life you actually want. Because the life you want requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. And that version is tougher, stronger, more resilient than you are right now. And the gap between who you are and who you need to be is closed through voluntary suffering, through choosing the hard path, through pushing past the quit signal. Every single day, your mental toughness starts now, not when life forces you. Now, what discomfort are you choosing today?